In this video tutorial, I want to show you how we can go to the Census Bureau to get additional data, additional variables to bring into our GIS. You'll go to the main census website, and from there you'll go to Data and then American Fact Finder. Now I recommend using Internet Explorer. It also says that Mozilla Firefox 3.6 works. I also find that Google Chrome works quite well. I've had problems with Firefox in the past. I'm not sure if it works better now. But Internet Explorer or Google Chrome tend to work quite well. Once you're in American Fact Finder, the first thing I recommend doing is starting off by selecting your geographies. This is selecting the level at which you want the data to be aggregated. Now this is where you need to think back to what your map is actually going to be of. Is it a map of states? Is it a map of counties? Is it a map of census tracts? Whatever your unit of analysis, that's what you're going to want to select your geography to be. It wouldn't make sense to select data that's been aggregated to the census tract level if you're really trying to make a map of states, or vice versa. I see this happen a lot where people will select, show me data for the state of Colorado, when in fact they want data for census tracts within Colorado. You always want to make sure you're selecting the right geographic type. So if you start here with list, you can do the drop down and go ahead and click census tract. You could also go through the name option here and just scroll down and select census tract here as well. And you'll get the option of all census tracts within particular states. So I want to get census tracts within Colorado because ultimately in my GIS, for example, I want census tracts for the city of Denver. So I might as well just go ahead and get data for all census tracts within Colorado because that'll encompass Denver. Any excess data that I have, when I join it to my shapefile in GIS, that data will just disappear. Now if you happen to be getting data for census tracts for a city that spans more than one state, for example Chicago will often spill into Indiana or Wisconsin, you'll need to check those boxes as well and download census tract data for all of those relevant states. So select that and then hit add. And you'll notice that it goes up here and adds all census tracts within Colorado. And then you can go ahead and close that particular window right here. And now you want to select the data set you want to use. And this is where you'll select topics here on the left and data set. And generally what you'll find is if you want a lot of variables, which typically we do, you'll want to select the 2010 ACS 5-year estimates. The way it works is to get all these variables, they have the American Community Survey, which they survey every year, but it's a sample of the population. So in order to get a large enough sample, they have to aggregate across 5 years of the American Community Survey. So we'll go ahead and select 2010 ACS 5-year estimates. And then you can go ahead and close that. And this is where I would recommend browsing through the various variables. They can get quite complicated, and you'll end up having to do a lot of cleaning up of the data because there's just so many different variables within each of those particular variables. So let me just show you some of my favorites. I'm going to go to page 2 here and select S1701. That's poverty status in the past 12 months. And what that'll do is gives you a number, an estimate for each census tract of the total number of people we know the poverty status of, whether they're poor or not, and then the next one will be the number of those who are actually poor. And we can make a percent impoverished out of that. And it also does it a breakdown by a number of other categories, but I usually don't bother with that. Let's get a race and ethnicity category. So let's go to page 4 here. And we'll look for Hispanic or Latino origin by race. So this will allow us to look at white non-Hispanic, black non-Hispanic, Latinos, and so on, and disaggregate race and ethnicity in that way. Another one that's often quite useful is median household income for each census tract. And that's way over on page 16, so I'm going to jump way over there. Usually just helps to click on these, and then here's page 16. And we want to look for B19013, median household income in the past 12 months, adjusted for inflation. And once you've selected the ones you want, you go ahead and hit download. And I think there may be a limit of 5 variables at any one time. So go ahead and hit download. And you'll see that it's going to create a zip file of those 3 products, and hit OK. And sometimes it takes a while for it to build your file. A lot of times it depends on how many census tracts. If you're doing California or New York, there's a lot of census tracts, a lot of data, so it might take a while. It's starting to build Colorado rather quickly here, so then I can hit download. And you'll see that it's zipping them here down here. And it's done. And when it's done, I can go ahead and double click and open that up. And what you'll notice is that it downloads each variable in a separate Excel file. And what we'll want to do before we bring this data into GIS is to just put them into a single census file, a single Excel file. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have to clean each of these up. So I'm going to go ahead and open the first one here, just double click on it. And it's up to you. It's not a bad idea if you want to go ahead and save these original Excel files into your folder so that you have the originals, so that if something goes wrong you can go back to these originals. That's actually a very good policy. I'm actually going to skip that step and assume that you're doing that. But when you clean up these Excel files from Census Bureau, there's just basically a couple of things you want to do. The first thing is you want to make sure you keep the correct geography identifier here. And I'm going to expand this second column here, and I just do that by putting the cursor between the B and C column and double clicking, and that expands it to the extent necessary to see it. This is actually the number that's going to correspond to your FIPS code in your shapefile. For example, each census tract has a unique identifying number, every state has a unique identifying number, and so on. And we need to know which census tract, in this case, this row of data should be matched up with. And that's how GIS knows. It uses this geography identifying number and matches it with the corresponding FIPS code. I'm going to go ahead and rename this Join ID. It's just a habit I have. Then I'm going to tab over, and here's where I get to the total. This is, again, race and ethnicity variable. And this is the total population in each census tract. So I'm going to call this pop tote, and then tab, tab, and tab. Again, until I get over here. And this is the white non-Hispanic. It gives me the estimate for each census tract. I'm going to just type white NH for white non-Hispanic. Tab over until I get to black NH, black non-Hispanic. And I can keep tabbing over. Here's Asian NH for Asian non-Hispanic. And then if I tab all the way over, I'll eventually get to Hispanic. You can see where it switches from not Hispanic to Hispanic. It gives you an estimate. That's Latinos. So I'll put Latino. And those are the ones I want. If you want to keep some of these others, it's perfectly fine. Just select the particular ones you want. And I want to get rid of everything after Latino because it breaks it down by race. And I'm not interested in that at this point, so I'm going to right click and delete. And then I'm going to just left click here, hold, and drag across until I get to Asian non-Hispanic, right click and delete. And then I've got all of these columns that I didn't change, I didn't name. I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to hold down the control key as I click on each of those columns. Everything I did not name. These are margin of errors. We're not particularly interested in those at this time. So right click and delete, and then I also don't need these top rows, so I'm going to get rid of these top rows, and I'm left with just the ones I want. So that's how you clean up the race and once you have that first variable cleaned up, you'll want to add the other variables to that same sheet. So you'll just go back to your zip file here and open up the next one. And here's we have median household income. Here's that estimate one. That's the one you want. I'm going to rename that MHI for median household income. I don't need these top rows. And this is the column I want. Now these are all going to be in the same order as the other ones, so I don't need to worry about that. I can just highlight that whole column, right click, copy, and bring it over here and paste it into my original one there. And I can go ahead and close that median household income one. And then I need that last one. This is the poverty status one, population for whom poverty status is determined. And then this is the one, the number of those who are actually below poverty. So I'm going to call this one PovStat, tab over, and then Pov below. And it, it breaks it down by age and other things like that. It gets a little more complicated. I'm just going to stick with those originals. So you don't need those. But all I need are these two columns. So I need to get rid of the one in the middle, just delete that one. And I don't need all this top row stuff. Delete that. And just highlight those two, copy, and bring them over. Okay. Now, popstat is sometimes the same as poptote, but you'll notice sometimes we don't always know the poverty status of everybody in the census tract. So here's the population is 3,752, but we only know the status of 3,744 of those, of which 2,127 people are below poverty. So we're going to create percent impoverished, we use pov below and popstat. To create percent white non-Hispanic, we would use white NH over poptote and so on. MHI can stand alone. The last thing you want to do, or I guess I'll close out this last Excel one here. Close that. Don't need to save it. Last thing I would do is double click down here and just call this Cen for census. And then go ahead and file save as. And you want to make sure you save it someplace that makes sense where you're saving all of your data. And I'll just go ahead and call this COCT Cen for Colorado Census Tract Census. And make sure you save it as Excel 9703 workbook. Okay? And you'll go ahead and hit save. And once that's done, you'll close that Excel file. Close out Excel because you don't want that up when you try to bring it into GIS. So that's how you access census data, and that's how you clean it up and prepare it for use in GIS. Hope that was helpful.